Hello guys, this is the Super Mileage Show. I am Kshitij Agrawal. Let's get started. So today, me and Dhatrish will be taking you through some of the mechanical subsystems of the car. It will help you in getting a better understanding of how our car is actually made, and then maybe you can apply those practices while building your own project.
But Kshitij, before we venture into that, we have some interesting news from this week.
Oh yes, we surely do.
So here goes. General Motors and EVgo have actually put forth a new partnership. And what do they aim to get out of this? They want to install more than 2,700 DC fast charging connectors throughout the US. And that's not it. And they want, the driving energy of all of these fast charging connectors to be 100% renewable energy sources. Does that ring a bell? I'm sure it does.
I mean, all of these actions have already been taken by other automakers in the US, for example, Tesla. But apart from that, I think they'll achieve a goal of selling a million EVs by 2025, which has been put forward by their CEO. Also, after a major fail in the Indian and the Korean markets, I hope they make a better comeback using EVs and hybrid electric vehicles. So yeah, sounds like a positive news. Hope it works out for them.
Moving on, Toyota actually remains on track to implement their solid state batteries in the electric vehicles that they're going to manufacture by 2025. So what are solid state batteries? In the current lithium ion technology that we use, there's a liquid electrolyte. So you replace that using a solid electrolyte, and that's how it is coined as a solid state battery. According to experts, they say this is a very good move, and you could actually achieve higher range without having to compromise on the size of the battery pack.
Also, the Toyota's prototype cells are sulfur based in the electrolyte. So it is a very challenging part to make these cells since you have to have a ultra dry environment around you. But I think the payoff is great enough since Volkswagen is investing in such technology itself and has the similar deadline around 2025 to roll such cars out. They have partnered with this startup called QuantumScape, which is working in this current field of making solid electrolyte type cells. So it's a good move. I think it will be more challenging for other automakers if this works out for both Toyota and Volkswagen. So we'll be starting off with the mechanical subsystems of the car. We'll take you through some of the points. Now, in these points, we'll be discussing how the actual process works in designing, manufacturing, and all other mechanical parts of the car. And then once you are done with that, you get a final proper structure of the car. So we start off with the first point, that is the design. In design, basically we start off with drawing or rendering, in which the ideas which are there in the designer's mind and the team's mind are actually put onto pen and paper, and then further they are done in the similar way on the CAD softwares. Now, before moving on to the CAD softwares, you need to ensure that your designs and your geometrical models or calculations are well under the rules and regulations, and the constituent is called a package. Like the constituent of all these geometrical calculations and summation is called a package. Now, the package needs to be correct and it needs to be according to the team's choice or the competition's requirements. Otherwise, you'll end up designing a car which cannot be used for participation or even for your own use. Like there might be differences that might cause problems later on. Now, once we are done with this stage, we move on to the the shelf engineering or the pre-engineering state, where more ideas are put into place before actually finalization of the design, like finalizing the design. So what is done, the design is put into the CAD and the CAE softwares. Different type of analyses are done, and these are validated experimentally. Now you can add ideas or other points into this, and you get to know what the problems are. Also, you can use these ideas to implement them for further models if they cannot be implemented right now. So that is the pre-engineering stage. After this, the designs are finalized. They go through multiple software tests because we are not a manufacturer, so we cannot have physical tests or any wind tunnel tests. So we need to have all of these tests based on the basis of the software. Multiple conditions are put onto it, and then the final design is approved by the design head and the team. Then we move on to the fabrication part.
Once we get into the fabrication after we have completed through the design checks and the modeling and the analysis, what does fabrication do? So, fabrication in the truest essence is a very simple process. So, what is the definition of fabrication? It is the entire process of building, machines and structures from raw metal materials. So, if you see, when you're using a raw material and then you make sure that it undergoes cutting, then forming, beating, welding, and then once all of these processes or many more are included and performed on the material, then it is assembled to make sure that the final product is achieved. So, what is the difference between a fabricated one and a non-fabricated project? So, if you look at a product and you have to decide whether it is fabricated or non-fabricated, there's a fundamental difference between them. So, if you see a product that it is made of ready-made materials and it's just assembled, then that is not a fabricated product. But if you're seeing that a product is, being manufactured using a raw material and probably using the all the processes that I mentioned earlier and even more, maybe using the lathe or the milling machine, the welding, or any other casting procedure or other fabrication techniques. So the end product which is achieved using these entire processes is called a fabricated product. So when you talk about fabrication, there are actually many types, and you can age them from the age-old casting technique or to the latest pulse MIG welding techniques that we have today. And because Team Inferno has aluminium as its chassis material, we perform the welding process to fabricate our chassis. And the type of welding that we actually perform is the TIG welding process. So why the TIG welding process when you have other welding processes available? So TIG is actually the most efficient welding process available. Even though it's a slower process than the MIG welding, it actually helps you get precise welds. So that is one of the main reasons that Team Inferno has chosen TIG welding to fabricate the aluminum chassis that we're using. And as you can guys can see that I've mentioned that we use aluminum, you guys will be wondering, I mean, what's the thought process behind selecting a material for whatever application that it might be. So one of the most basic things that one needs to keep in mind when it comes to selecting of the material is the application or the purpose that it has to tend to. So in our case, it is forming the base material of the chassis. So it has to, basically provide strength and rigidity to the whole chassis, and also at the same time make sure that it is a lightweight chassis. So that's one of the main reasons we went to aluminium. Likewise, there are many other metals, be it steel, be it titanium, etc. So it's up to the application and the need. You guys can select the material that is required. So once all of this is done, you have your fabricated end product, and in our case, it is the chassis. I mean, the chassis in alone it's not enough to make sure that you have a car ready. So one of the major things that is required is the outer body. And when I'm talking about the outer body, there are two things that come to everyone's mind. One is the unibody, and the other is the body on frame. So what are these two? The unibody is a very rigorous method, and even though it is used in mass production for most automobiles today, it was not the case. So probably a century ago, and it's a very intricate process and a time-consuming one if you had to do it on a single scale rather than on a large scale. And even though it has its advantages, we couldn't go for the same because of price constraints and time constraints. So what Team Inferno goes for is the body on frame outer body manufacturing method. So what this is you have a separate rigid body, and then you fix the outer body to that. So this rigid body will be the chassis, like I previously mentioned, and to this you have your outer body that is going to be fixed externally. and not imbibed like a monocoque or a semi-monocoque chassis. And again, there are many materials for going for your outer body manufacturing. It can be the carbon fiber, the glass fiber, polycarbonate, and ABS, whatnot. But again, all of this depends on what application you're using it for, and the cost and other factors like this come into play.
So now we have the wheels and brake system. Now there's a very big misconception that the bigger wheels are better, and the alloys are better in wheels. Sometimes the alloys are actually not better than the steel counterparts, because some alloy elements are actually heavier than the steel ones. Also, bigger wheels have more surface area, if they are, because since they are big, they might be thick too sometimes, and they cover more surface area, which actually takes a toll on the efficiency of the vehicle. So you need to keep that in check. Apart from that, on our car we use cycle tires, which are not like the car tires used in the commercial vehicles. So our tires are 26 inch on the rear and 20 on the front. Now these tires are slicks, so basically they don't have treads that actually provide grip on the road. These are for providing efficiency, so you need to have minimum friction as possible. Now, for the cycle tires, we have similar to cycle braking systems, that is the rim brakes, which are sort of V, and which can be used to clamp the rim and stop the speeding vehicle, or we can use the hydraulic brakes, which are more efficient. So in our case, we use the hydraulic brakes since they hold the disc better, and on the uphill or on the downhill, they are much more efficient than the V brakes. Since we have to do that testing on the ramp before passing the technical inspection, we use the hydraulic brakes. Then we move on to the steering mechanism of the vehicle.
So, what is a steering mechanism? A steering mechanism, like any other mechanism, is a simple mechanism. But what is its purpose? What it does is it converts the rotary motion of a steering system to the swiveling motion of the vehicle's wheels to be precise. And as you know, if you're talking about an automobile which has four wheels, you will see that all four wheels have to turn at different angles. That's pretty obvious because all of them are turning at different radius themselves. And when you're talking about steering mechanisms, there are two mechanisms that come to anyone's mind. One is the Davis mechanism, and the other is the Ackermann mechanism. So, talking about the Davis mechanism, it is a mechanism in which the entire mechanism is placed in front of the axle of the wheel. And also, if you notice, this has more sliding pairs than the turning pairs that are present. And due to this reason, there's also more friction due to the wear and tear. And this leads to inaccuracy of this mechanism over a very short period of time. But that is not the case when we come to Ackermann steering mechanism. So this Ackermann steering mechanism is completely contrast to the Davis mechanism. So in this Ackermann steering mechanism, the entire mechanism is placed behind the axle of the wheel, and also it has more turning pairs than the sliding pairs. So for that reason, there's lesser friction wear, and it's durable for longer durations. And that is one reason, and also the simplicity in its construction, that an Ackermann steering mechanism that has been used widely throughout the world. And in the past 1 minute, you guys would have heard that I've used the word Ackermann a lot. I'm pretty sure you would have found it very similar and familiar, if I call that. Just to clear your air around it, this Ackermann mechanism was actually a part of our syllabus in the fourth semester in kinematics of machine subject. And like all of us, even we gave it a miss just because it came in the odd question of the question paper. And not until we started actually working on the car did we know the importance of Ackermann, and we actually had to get back those textbooks and run through what the mechanism actually is. So that's one thing that all of us are guilty of, but I think it's pretty fine. I mean, everyone does that, so did we.
None of us would admit to making that mistake. So that's it for the video, guys. That's it for the mechanical subsystems. We'll be discussing more subsystems, and we'll be discussing these subsystems in detail over the next week. And make sure you watch those videos out, since it will help you actually understand these mechanisms in detail and how they are actually worked on with. So moving on with the safety tip of the day. So it is regarding your safety at a workplace or at an event. So different rules and regulations are there for any event or any workplace, since they function differently and their setup and locations are different. So make sure you attend all the briefs and debriefs regarding it, and practice them beforehand in other safety places, like other places, so that you are prepared in case of an emergency. So that's it for the video today, guys. Please like and share if you enjoyed our video. And till then, think, sketch, and execute. Goodbye.